Oh, hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program Teacher Certification Program. And like to thank you all for coming out tonight. And if you would, go ahead and be seated if you're standing at this time. Now, we're moving along in the character unit. We're in the 4th chapter right now. And so what we're going to do, we're going to actually just take a look back a little ways when we get to, hopefully when we get to what we've learned, and we're going to touch on a little bit from the front of the book to where we are now. Today, though, we're going to be starting, if you'll turn to LP 4D. LP 4D. This is the lesson plan, and of course this is a teacher certification program. So you as certifying teachers would be checking the lesson plan. You would have a teacher's manual and be checking the lesson plan before every class at some point in time, preparing yourself. Today, if you'll look at procedure number 7, and we start out actually by asking, what are some benefits of maintaining a positive character? Of course, if you're in an interactive classroom, you would get some answers, possibly even someone mentioning being trusted, people knowing that you're honest, someone to be looked up to, like a role model, for instance. And if you'll notice, it says to explain to students that earning a great reputation is another benefit that comes from having a positive character. Now, in the section that we're coming into, there's going to be some explaining about that actually. It says to have students turn to page 90 in the handbooks and read the section entitled Your Reputation Precedes You, and stress that a great reputation is something to be treasured and carefully maintained. And yes, that it is. Once you get a reputation, a solid, great reputation for something, beneficial, you need to hold on to it. And it can be hard sometimes. Now, a lot of people relish having a bad reputation, like being a bully or something like that. And we'll talk about those things. But let's go ahead and turn to page 90 right now. So we're going to, hopefully tonight, we'll put these final touches on chapter 4. And, the title, of course, being Now That I Have It, How Do I Keep It? And in the last class, it was room to grow. And I'm just mentioning this. You can stay on page 90, but room to grow. And, of course, we're going to make some bad choices and mess up while we're learning. That's just how it goes. But we can keep pushing and be determined to get this right. We don't have to set out on purpose to do something that we know is wrong. But yeah, we're going to mess up along the way, and that's what the last chapter was all about, was giving yourself room to grow. Not just throwing it to the wind and saying, oh, well, I can't do any better than that. It's nothing like that. It's allowing yourself to know that, okay, I messed up, I can correct this at this point and go back to building my great reputation and getting this thing right. So we're going to be talking about this reputation today. So page 90. Your reputation precedes you. And there are many advantages to maintaining positive character, one of which is your reputation. Your reputation is developed over time. It is the overall quality or character as seen or judged by people in general. Now, let's talk about that for just a minute. Now, in the glossary, we're not going to go there right now, but for your information, in the glossary, the definition of the reputation is a specific characteristic or trait that is ascribed to a person or thing. So think about this for a minute. A specific character or trait that is assigned to a person or a thing. So being assigned to somebody. I mean, look around right now in this room itself. Everybody in here has a reputation for something. We might not be completely aware of the reputation that someone has built to some degree if we don't really know the person. But I would venture to say that we do know a little bit about each other in this room right now. And I know there's people in here who are considered very hard workers. I know there's people in here that are considered very studious, that really dig into the books and are really studying the peaceful solution. I know that there are young men in here that have a reputation of being very well behaved. So everyone in here has a reputation. And it's ascribed to a person or assigned to a person, but it's kind of like what you may have heard about a person has something to do with it, or what you know about a person. And it should be what you know about that person, but many times in society today, it's all about what someone has heard. Gossip. So we want to guard against that. But our reputation is developed over time. And develop, of course, we've been over this word before, but is to cause to grow or expand, to aid in the growth of. You have to actually put some effort into it. It doesn't just occur automatically. Of course, the glossary, again, in the back of the book on page 169, which we're not going to, but it's there for your use. Now, notice that it says it's the overall quality or character as seen or judged by people. Judged by people. So people are judging in general. It can also mean gaining recognition from other people for some characteristic or ability you possess. Man, that guy really knows how to push that lawnmower, Man, my lawn looks great every time he gets done with it. Or, when he works on my car, I go away with it running just fine, Or, there's many other things that you could look at and just in day-to-day working around people. In fact, I've had the opportunity recently to work with a group of men, and I got to tell you, when I first looked at the task before us, I thought, well, there's no way we're going to get this done. That was my first thought when I looked at it. And I studied it and measured and looked, and it actually involved cutting down a very large tree. And I thought, wow, I don't know if this is going to get done. I don't know if we have the equipment for it. Well, once I started talking to these men, they were like, oh, it's no problem. And I was, really? Really? It's no problem? Yeah, no problem at all. We're going to get it. And the next thing I know, they pull out the equipment. We've got the right truck there for the job and everything, and the job went very smooth, actually. They did a wonderful job. And so, these men gained some recognition in my eyes today, a few days ago and today, of being able to handle this type of job quite readily with no problem. And that next time they tell me that, hey, no problem, I can really believe that, okay, no problem. I believe it. I've already seen them in action. So I've ascribed to these people this special trait of being able to get a job done. And I've seen it with my own eyes. I didn't have to hear it from anybody. So it can mean gaining recognition from other people for some characteristic or ability that you possess, whether positive or negative. And you must consistently demonstrate and maintain positive moral character traits in order to develop a great reputation. Now, just to jar your memory just a little bit there, let's go ahead and turn to page 14 for just a minute in your handbook, in your teacher's handbook. Page 14. And here is where you'll find the positive character traits. And up at the top it says your character is made up of many different qualities, and they're called character traits. So they're these traits. These traits can be either positive or negative based upon your values, what you've been taught, your choices, your experiences. And that trait of a positive work ethic, the The ability to say, well, let's get her done. Let's get in there and do it. We've got the equipment, we got the know-how, let's go. Well, that's a great trait to have. It's a positive work ethic. We have positive traits and we have negative traits. And then we have personality traits also. Personality is one thing, character is another thing. Let's go back to page 90 for a moment. Once a bad reputation is established, it's difficult to undo what others think of you. It's far better to maintain a decent reputation, so be careful and pay attention to the reputation that you are building. Yeah, so once that bad reputation is done, think back a little bit, like when you were in school, and think about the school bully. Every school had one. I'm sure everyone in here has probably had some experience with a school bully. Think about it for a minute. That person had a reputation of being a bully. Was it anything that they ever lived down? I can't say for sure if they did or not, but I know during the time that I was in a certain period of my life in school, the school bully didn't live it down. He was always the school bully. Of course, lost track of him over time, changed schools, whatever the case may be. But that person, as far as I knew, always had that thing over them of being the school bully. And it was probably something that he liked. I don't know. But that's a bad reputation. And it is difficult to undo what others think of you. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but you have to be very, very careful. This whole chapter is about, now that I have it, how do I keep it? When you've built a great reputation for a certain thing, it's fragile. It's like carrying an egg in your pocket. You got to be very careful because anything can trip it up just like that. And once that comes, it's a very, very, very hard thing. Once that's blown away, it's a very hard thing to get back. You can do it, and that's why we've got to have room to grow. Remember the previous chapter. But it's a hard thing. Don't take it lightly. Now, when negative character traits are demonstrated over a period of time, they become part of your character and part of your reputation. Do you know anyone with a bad reputation? Just like I asked momentarily. That reputation was developed by some action others saw or heard about that person at one time or another, whether it was true or not. In other words, someone who steals will gain the reputation of being a thief and will not be trusted. People will be afraid to leave their belongings around that person. And I can think back right now about someone who had a reputation as a thief, and I believed it. I had no proof that they were a thief, but I believed what was coming from people that I knew and trusted, that the person was a thief. So, see, once again, whether it's true or not, and based upon your values and your thoughts on how to find out truthfully about a person, how to really dig in and see if they're a person of high moral character or not, that comes. But it's so easy to get an idea about somebody just by a word, from somebody being said about that person. It can stick with you a long time, and every time you see that person, you'll be thinking that same thing. Man, that guy's a thief, Even though don't know or not, and you might even kind of hang around the person or know him a little bit or something, but still in the back of your mind is that one little voice saying, he's a thief. He's a thief. So you got to be very careful about what you listen to also. All right. On the other hand, oh, by the way, negative character traits are listed on page 19. Page 19 in your handbook. We don't have to go there right now, but they're listed on page 19. Okay, on the other hand, a person who has earned a reputation of being trustworthy and responsible will be known as a dependable person. He will be trusted, respected, and admired for his positive character traits. And think about it for just a minute. It says A person who has earned a reputation of being trustworthy and responsible. If you do anything to blow that trust, possibly it's a supervisor that you're working with, and the supervisor asks you something and you sugarcoat the answer, give some rosy answer rather than the real deal. Now that supervisor may or might let that go at the time, but then again it comes along and he asks you a question. If you do the same thing, now that supervisor is going to be looking and thinking, well, wait a minute here. Can I really trust what I'm being told by this person? Is he really being responsible with the responsibility and the authority that I've given him? So anyway, if you have that type of reputation, you will be trusted, respected, and admired for your positive character traits. And as you know, word gets around whether it's positive or negative, and your reputation is no different. In fact, you might know all about someone, though it might be true or not, without ever meeting them, because their reputation precedes them. It goes before them. It's something that, well, just like it says right here, you've never even met them, but their reputation is out there. You've heard about them. You've heard people talk about them. I know there was a person coming to work at a place that I worked at, and we knew this person to be an extremely great salesperson for years. At least 10 to 15 years we knew about this man and his excellent sales ability and breaking records and so forth. And he was kind of out of the picture for a couple years, but when he decided to come back into the car sales realm, we were glad that to even talk to him about doing that. And we hired him, gave him a nice sign-on bonus and everything, and really a great pay plan. And something occurred. Something occurred to the man. The reputation that preceded him before many people even met him, they were like in awe when the guy came into the dealership, and they were like, wow, he's working here now? And he had his reputation was just out there, But something occurred, and he didn't even sell a car, and then it was found out that there was some other problems in his life, to do with drugs and drinking and so forth. And so his reputation in a week, that reputation was just blown out of the water. And everybody was telling everybody in a very large town about how this guy couldn't sell a wheel. So there's a reputation right there too. Now, the importance of your reputation, though, we're talking about, that's an example of things that occur, but what we're talking about here is the important thing, and the important thing is building that great moral character and having a reputation of being trustworthy, honest, responsible, all these things, respectful. That's what we're talking about doing, and that's the type of reputation that you want to build. And along the way, guess what? You will be known as somebody who has a positive work ethic, because you're going to do that. If you're respectful and responsible and trustworthy, you're going to put in a great day's work. And then your supervisor and those above your supervisor are going to know that they can trust you in everything. But anyway, you got to remember that people are observing you at all times. Remember, we talked about this before, especially being a teacher of the peaceful solution. People are going to watch you. They're going to listen to what you do. If you do something kind of off the wall, they're going to be thinking, oh, well, it must be all right to do that. That must be considered high moral character. They might. So you could actually send somebody off in the wrong direction by that. Or they might just think, well, I don't know why I'm listening to that guy. They might recognize it for what it is. So people are observing you at all times, whether you realize it or not. And the more others observe you, the more they put together a picture of what you're all about. So as you strive to maintain a positive moral character, you will maintain a positive reputation at the same time. And again, I gave that example there of the man at the dealership and all, because it was something that stuck in my mind for a very long time. I just couldn't even believe it. But I've also seen, while I've been learning and teaching the peaceful solution, I've seen people in various stages of changing their character for the better. I've seen them in various stages of either, being determined and keeping on and really going strong at it and improving. And I've seen people that kind of stagnated a little bit. But then I've seen people that I looked up to, that I held in high regard and had a lot of respect for, knowing that they were practicing the peaceful solution, learning. Everything they did seemed to be like right there. And then in one blow, whack, they were gone, never to hear from again. And so it's amazing how these things occur. And so I want you to keep your mind on that and know how fragile it really is. When you're working to build respect, when you're working to build that trustworthy, responsible reputation, when you're working to get rid of anything bad that may be floating around about you, when you're working to get rid of that, once you get there, and every step you take along the way, remember, it's fragile. And just to mention this for just a minute, turn back one page to page 89. And when you find yourself in this position and are really upset at yourself for doing something that you know you shouldn't have done, or that possibly someone has pointed out to you, you need to acknowledge that you made a mistake. You got to be honest with yourself first. That's one of the things that you've got to do. Until you can acknowledge it, you can't change it, because in your mind there's nothing there to change. So you have to acknowledge that there was a problem, that a mistake was made or a bad choice was made, and you've got to get some help on that. Get some instruction. And then, admit it and plan to never make that mistake again. And to do that, you got to be humble. That's another great character trait. You've got to be humble. Don't kick yourself and call yourself names and so forth. Just be determined to correct that situation. And look down at the last paragraph. It says, do the best you can to avoid making mistakes by setting your mind in advance and being prepared to handle curveballs and pitfalls. But if you do make a mistake, don't give up on maintaining your positive character. Give yourself that room to grow and consider them as lessons learned. Take it seriously and fix it and work on it. Don't just take it lightly and throw it off to the side. And that way you can be known as someone with a great reputation. It is something that should be treasured and maintained. It should be treasured. You should be pleased to know that people consider you having a great moral character, okay? I can't stress that enough, really. Okay, let's go ahead and turn over to page 91 for a moment. Now, page 91, this is a play. So this is kind of hard to deal with when you're in a situation that's not very interactive. When you have a smaller class, or when you're teaching your family, this is a great thing to do, and people can take the actual, can be the student or Mr. Wilson or what have you, And there's a narrative that actually goes along with this too that can be played. So you could read through this and get the gist of what's going on with it, and it's a pretty great play. But we're going to pass it for right now, and we're going to go ahead and move on to page 100. So if you go ahead and turn with me to page 100. Now also we'll want to go back to LP4D. Just hold your finger there on page 100 and go back to LP4E, LP4E. And so in Procedure 9, it says to encourage students to read the section found on page 100 of their handbooks entitled What I Have Learned. Well, have no fear, you can read it tonight as I do. We'll read it together. And conclude the lesson by re-emphasizing to students that maintaining a positive moral character begins by setting their minds in advance to make right choices. So you want to leave them with something. Whenever they leave the room, you want to leave your students with this final thought. And most of the time we do try to finish up a lesson right here, after what we have learned. We try to finish it up right there instead of moving on to the next chapter. That way a person has time to kind of digest the information that they've gotten. So try to plan your classes. Okay, let's go ahead and turn over to page 100. We'll get back to that shortly. Page 100. Okay, so this is titled What I've Learned. And this is where we're going to be kind of going back and forth a little bit, looking at something. The first thing that you would want to go over with your students is maintaining my positive moral character begins with controlling my thoughts and setting my mind in advance, not to be influenced to do anything I know is wrong or anything that will harm myself or others. Now, in that word controlling, of course, I immediately think of self-control. If you've been working with the Peaceful Solution very long at all, you've got to be thinking about self-control and the stop sign that pops up in your mind, the STOP acronym, stop, think, consider your options, and proceed with the right choice. So maintaining your positive moral character begins with doing that, with controlling your thoughts and setting your mind in advance. Now that setting your mind in advance can be a pretty tough thing to follow through on. Again, it's just like back on the previous page 90 when it was talking about the word, developing this positive moral character. That develop, you have to put that effort into it. You have to help it to grow. So let's go ahead and turn back to page 80 for a moment. Give me a moment. Okay, page 80, setting our mind in advance. Now, have you ever heard the saying, it's all in your head? And most people say it sarcastically, but there is some truth to it, whether you're aware of it or not. Every action begins with a thought. So setting your mind in advance to maintain your positive character traits begins by first considering just how important it is to have moral character, and to be trusted, admired, respected, and known as an honest, reliable, compassionate person is something that you should want. And so the next step is to make up your mind. You got to make up your mind. You can't, lollygag around and be, take it lightly. The next step is to make up your mind. To do this, make up your mind not to be influenced, to do anything that will compromise your character. There's certain things that you have control of and some things you don't have control of as far as the influences that are out there that you're in front of every day. You can control what you put in front of you. Now, other people around you, they might say something at some time that is not something that you would have liked to hear. It might have sent your thoughts in a certain direction for a moment, but you can pull back. You got to be prepared for it. So the next step is to make up your mind not to be influenced to do anything that will compromise your character. In other words, determine in your mind that no one can talk you into doing something you know is wrong. This is called setting your mind in advance. For example, you know that stealing is wrong. Well, you got to set your mind in advance to always respect another person's property as you would want others to respect yours. Now that can be hard to do. When you're out on the work site and there's tools that are being used, and you might not have blanket approval to use every tool, and there's something there that you really would like to use to make your job easier, and no one's around to get the permission, and you're only going to use it for a minute, and you go over there and grab it. Or, you might be in a classroom, and a very simple thing like a pen laying on a desk, a pencil laying on a desk, and yours quit working. You really want to write something down really bad. Well, it's just laying there. Who does it belong to? I'm just going to use it for a minute. If you do this, you're not practicing self-control. You haven't set your mind in advance. You haven't made your mind up to never do that. Once you make your mind up, you'll find yourself increasing in your ability to resist such things. Might seem like a little thing, but it's not. So you got to watch your thoughts. Let's step on down here a little bit on the fourth paragraph. It's important, however, when these type of negative thoughts of revenge enter into your mind, it's talking about anger, to immediately reevaluate them and turn them into positive thoughts that will not lead you to compromise your positive character. Turn them into positive thoughts. Now, let's look at this example right here. It says, for example, if someone calls you stupid, instead of immediately becoming angry and desiring to get back at him, change it to positive thinking by saying to yourself, after all, two wrongs can't make a right. That's a pretty easy one to do. Two wrongs don't make a right. Just remember, hey, calm down. Calm down, David. Two wrongs don't make a right. Now, it's a little tougher to remember, I hope I'm not contributing to his having a bad day. If you're a little bit angry and, it's a little bit tougher to come up with that one. But you can get to it, and when you do, it'll actually, to me, it makes me smile a little bit there when I do it. So remember to change those thoughts. If you look over on the next page, you can actually see there's a section there. It says quiz time. It says negative thoughts, and it asks you to write something off to the side. Like number 1, it says, he makes me so mad, I could just... You could think, well, he might be having a bad day. He was the one who told on me, now I'll just take care of him. You could think, well, I'm glad he's trying to help me out by correcting the situation. Okay. Get out of my face, you! Well, you could think to yourself, be calm, don't add fuel to the fire, And there's many other things that you could do when you have these negative thoughts, but this is part of planning, setting your mind in advance. You kind of get used to saying something positive when you have these thoughts, and everybody knows what the thoughts are that you have. You know what it is. You know what goes on in your mind when someone does a certain thing to you, or you perceive that something was done to you. So you can set your mind in advance and have something planned, have some positive thoughts planned that you can switch to automatically. And then there's a few suggestions right there under positive affirmations. Let's go ahead and turn back to page 100. So once again, controlling my thoughts, setting my mind in advance, not to be influenced to do anything you know is wrong that will harm yourself or others. Remember, controlling, self-control, the STOP acronym, and setting your mind in advance. Very important, making up your mind. Number 2, I must think positively about my situations and always be ready to change negative thoughts to positive thoughts. Maintaining true morals and thinking will lead to positive actions and help maintain my reputation and character. Okay? Well, on, of course, page 79, let's go there for just a moment. page 79. Again, this is the beginning of the chapter. Now that I have it, how do I keep it? Look at the second paragraph. It says, maintaining your positive character means protecting and guarding yourself from influences and choices that could lead to developing negative character traits. Maintaining your character must be done, yes, on a daily basis. And sometimes it has to be done minute by minute. So it's guarding yourself from influences and choices that could lead to developing the negative character traits. So right there, it lets you know that you let these influences take over and you make the wrong choices, and you're actually developing, you're putting effort into causing these negative character traits to grow within you. So you have to protect against that. All right, let's look at, well, of course, page 80 and 81, we just went over that, and it all applies. Again, I must think positively about my situations and always be ready to change negative thoughts to positive ones. Maintaining true morals and thinking will lead to positive actions and help maintain my reputation and character. Let's look at number 3. I can avoid the curveballs and pitfalls if I am prepared with the right answer. Well, let's take a look at something here. How about page 85? So we're getting to go back through this chapter a little bit, and occasionally back a little bit earlier in the book to bring us back to where we're at now. So page 85, your curveballs and pitfalls. I have a few notes on the page, some of it is setting your mind in advance, making the right choices. Write down examples of mistakes or bad choices that you've made, and then write down something positive that you could have done differently to ready yourself for the next time that occurs. One of the things that was mentioned, I believe, I can't remember which teacher was doing this, but I think it was mentioned about how sometimes in the classes that we've taught, we sometimes take a piece of paper and crumble it up and show you that even though after you straighten it out and you try real hard, to get the lines out, that you can't. You got to remember that the things that you say, and the things that take place when you're caught off guard, they can't just be fixed automatically. Or the aluminum foil that you crumble up and do the same thing, you're never going to get those lines out of there. It just doesn't work. So curveballs and pitfalls are unexpected situations that can test your resolve to maintain a positive character. They come up when you least expect them and can catch you off guard. Anybody ever been caught off guard? Yeah. So these can catch you off guard. And you can find yourself in the middle of what we call a bad scene. Unprepared to deal with a situation that could lead you to making a bad choice that you will later regret. You're caught in something, it caught you off guard, you're there, you're in the middle of it, you're unsure, you're feeling very vulnerable. You can make a bad choice that you will regret later on. So these are unexpected situations. When you're caught off guard, they're unexpected situations where you need to set your mind in advance to not be caught off guard. You've got to be prepared for everything. And it's your emotions too. These emotions can arise. That's one of the biggest things that catch people off guard. Something takes place and all of a sudden here's the emotions flying off the handle, saying things that you look back on and say, oh man, why did I say that to that person? I didn't mean that. It's the emotions, really. You've got to be ready for it. You got to stop and think. So another important part of maintaining this character is being ready to forgive people who've hurt you or disappointed you, and in these situations that they could have been caught off guard also. Let's go ahead and turn on back over to page 100. So again, we're on number 3. I can avoid the curveballs and pitfalls if I'm prepared with the right answer. When I am confronted with a situation that could influence me to make a bad choice, I will know what to say and do in order to maintain my positive moral character. That's a big deal, knowing what to say and do. You know, one of the big things that I can share with you is that if you learn to control your emotions, you'll almost always do the right thing if you control your emotions. When that thing catches you off guard, when someone says something or they step on your toes or they do something, a perceived wrong to you or whatever, if you control your emotions, it goes a long way to doing the right thing. It helps you make the right choice because you're using the knowledge that you have, everything you've learned, and logic on dealing with the situation rather than letting your emotions take over. You can't let your emotions rule. Let's move on to number 4. Now, number 4 says, I know that if I set my mind in advance, again, that's on page 80. If you want to make a note there, you know, if you make a note on where these things are taking place, you're always able to go back to them and look it over. I can avoid many situations that could have serious consequences. I might not know every situation that will occur, but by following a moral standard, how could you possibly know every situation that's going to come your way? And that's one of the things when setting your mind in advance. You can't know every situation, but you can set your mind in advance to handle it a certain way. Yeah, you can have some positive things set in your mind. You can know some situations that come up in your life over and over again, and you can learn how to deal with them in a certain way. But on these situations that you don't know that come up, excuse me, by learning the peaceful solution and by having control of your emotions and stopping and thinking about what to do, and remembering as you're thinking about these things that whatever you're planning on doing is not going to hurt yourself, others, or property or the environment, that goes a very long way to being prepared and making the right choice for even those unknown things that come your way. By following that moral standard, you can readily judge all matters. That's what it boils down to in a nutshell. By following these moral standards, you can judge it, and you can judge it quickly. By using the knowledge, the wisdom that you have, the knowledge you have and putting it to work like that, that's the wisdom on how to use this knowledge. I had a note here on something that was, it was told in one of the teachers at one time, this could have been years ago, but one of the teachers at one time in a class made a point of saying that it is harder for someone to manipulate you and like be a game player manipulating you and you being pulled into the game if you are following this high moral standard. It's harder for them to pull you into their deal. You know, they may be the biggest game player, and everybody gets pulled off by them and manipulated by them, but you can be the one that doesn't, because what you're doing is not a game. The peaceful solution is not a game. You're not playing a game. You're not trying to manipulate anybody, you know. You're trying to help people, and you're trying to help yourself, and you're doing it with these high moral standards, not wanting to harm anybody, not wanting to harm property or the environment, and surely not wanting to harm yourself either. And by practicing, you know, self-control and having those calm emotions, you won't get pulled into these things. And to me, that is a great benefit of doing this, of not being pulled into those games, of not being a puppet on a string, you know, having someone manipulating you. I think that's a great reason right there that everybody should practice the peaceful solution for sure. All right, let's see. Let's go back to page 1 for just a minute while we're on this particular one. Let's go back to page 1 because we're talking about serious consequences that can be avoided. And if you look down, this is note to the student, and if you look down about halfway, it says a few sad facts of life. And let's just read that. In a way, it's sad that we live in a society that puts so much emphasis on what people look like on the outside, you know, whether they're popular, pretty, cute, athletic, tall, short, fat, as if those are the things that really matter. It's even sadder that we sometimes feel forced to spend so much time fixing, molding, and changing our outside appearances, the way we dress, speak, and walk, just to fit in and be like everyone else. The saddest fact of all is that in the long run, changing the outside just to fit in without improving who we are on the inside has caused many disappointments, lost friendships, and created bad scenes. That's what I wanted to point out, the bad scenes. In case you're wondering what a bad scene is, it's the 1 million teen pregnancies a year, I'm sure it's higher now, and the 25,000 teens who are diagnosed HIV positive every year in the United States alone, and the thousands more who die in drunk driving accidents, and the hundreds of thousands of teenagers who have to suffer through the divorce of their parents. And, you know, plus the wars and everything else going on, but this is what, by setting your mind in advance, you can avoid many situations that could lead to these type of serious consequences. Let's look at number 5 there. However, if I do make a mistake, I will not lie or try to justify a wrong, but I will make plans to avoid making the same mistake again. Well, to avoid making that same mistake again, what do you have to do? You have to be practicing self-control and set your mind in advance not to do that again. And I really like using that term, make up your mind. Setting your mind in advance is making up your mind. To not be affected by something. To not letting your emotions rule. I will not lie or try to justify a wrong. When you do that, those are emotions that are doing that. I mean, it comes out of your mouth, you know. You're trying to justify something and make excuses for it and everything. Be responsible. Stand up. Stand up and you know, like they say, stand up and be a man. Be responsible for what you've done. Fix it. Set your mind in advance not to let it occur again. Learn from this mistake. Okay, number 6, I will be truthful, acknowledge my mistake, and take responsibility for my actions. I will be truthful, acknowledge my mistake, and take responsibility for my actions. And let's turn back to page 89 for a minute there and look at the top paragraph. We went over that earlier, but once again, this is so very important. You know, by being responsible, by being admitting, you know, acknowledge that you made a mistake and don't try to justify that wrong. Not being truthful with yourself and others, you know, that's not going to help you change. That's not going to help you correct the situation. You've got to be honest with yourself, number one thing. Okay? Now, the next one says, I can regain the trust of others by making right choices that will help to maintain my character and by proving that I've learned from my mistake. It's going to take time. And I added the word, it says by making right choices. I put consistently in there. By consistently making right choices that will help to maintain my character and by proving that I've learned from my mistake. You got to consistently make right choices, and that's the way it gets fixed. You keep on making that right choice, Every time, every time, every time, boom, you fall off for a minute. You acknowledge that you made a mistake. You admit it. You fix it. You set your mind in advance. Make up your mind that you're not going to do it again. So you can regain the trust of others. That's a big deal. It does take time. But remember, let's go back to page 88. Let's go back to page 88 for a minute. Excuse me for just a minute. Okay, page 88. So let's start at the top. Room to grow. Have you ever said, I can't believe I just did that? This isn't what I meant to do. Well, you're not alone. Everyone will say or do something that is wrong from time to time. And sometimes we get our values mixed up, and for your notes, you can go back to page 6 and learn all about values. Or we're swayed by negative influences. We sometimes react impulsively and suddenly, and we surprise ourselves, regretting the spur-of-the-moment decision that we've made without a set plan. Now, that's being impulsive. We make decisions that are impulsive. Impulsive means to act on emotions without careful consideration of the consequences of your actions. You see how all of this goes together? It all fits together. You've got to use it together. Control your emotions. Okay, how? Well, watch the negative influences. You've got to be aware of those things and not let them take effect on you. You've got to make up your mind to practice self-control. You've got to know what it is. Stop, think, consider your options. Careful consideration of the consequences of your actions. Keep in mind that every action, even the ones you don't mean to do, starts with a thought. And if you've decided in advance what is right and wrong, you can avoid acting impulsively by being always aware of the direction of your thoughts. So back to it again, setting your mind in advance, making up your mind that you're not going to let your mind race away with those thoughts. If some negative thoughts enter your mind, you've got your mind made up to put them aside, get them out of there. Don't dwell on them. Otherwise, thoughts, what do they lead to? Feelings. What do feelings lead to? They lead to actions. What do actions lead to? Well, you're going to have a benefit or you're going to have some consequences, one or the other. So you got to remember, those thoughts lead to feelings, and then it goes from there. That's why you have to control these things. And if your thoughts racing in and out of your head so fast you couldn't tell someone what you were thinking a minute ago, then it's time to start noticing what your thoughts are. Here's a great thing to do right here. Sometimes keeping a record of your thoughts can help you become more aware of what you're thinking about. During the course of the day, simply write your thoughts down. Ask yourself, is this something I want to have in my mind? Will these thoughts help to build and maintain my character, or can they lead to, bad choices? Is that hard to do? Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to do. Carrying a notebook around you and a pen, and you're in the middle of something, and you start getting these thoughts, and you don't want to forget them. Is it hard to do? Yeah, pull out the book and do it. Yeah, it's hard to do. But remember, we're developing positive character. You've got to put the effort into it for it to grow. It's easy to put the effort into negative character. That's easy. You don't even have to think about it too much. You can just let it all roll because we've had it all in our minds for so long. We're well trained on that. That's why it takes so much effort to develop the positive character. Setting your mind and being prepared in advance to make the right choices. Man, it keeps coming back to setting your mind in advance, to making up your mind. And then when the curveballs and pitfalls come that we read about just a little while ago on page, I think, 85, then when they come, guess what? You can handle it. You're ready for it. Let's go on back to page 100. So I just want to read that again because to let you know, if you've had some problems, you can regain the trust of others by making these right choices that will help to maintain your character and prove to people that you've learned from your mistakes. And yes, it's going to take time. It's not easy. It's easy to lose it. It's not easy to get it back, but you can do it. All right, let's look at the last one there. By consistently maintaining my positive moral character, I will earn the reputation of being a person of integrity, steadfast, adherence to a strict moral or ethical code, rules, governed by rules. Let's turn to page 18. I think we got enough time. So page 18, it says the end result of internalizing positive character traits that can be clearly seen in your actions and attitudes is called integrity. So it's been described too. You see the word grit in there. If you look at it, it's inte and then grit and then y. So you think of that grit. And I remember the author of The Peaceful Solution even mentioning, true grit. Get that toughness, that mental toughness that makes you want to hang on and not let go. True grit, to stand up in the face of adversity. Not to stand up and get in a fight or some kind of argument, not that. But true grit, that mental toughness, that's setting your mind in advance, making up your mind to do the right thing, and then standing firm. What is that saying? If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, So this integrity, the quality of being honest and fair, a firm adherence to a code of moral values, and a state of being whole. And right there on page 19, by the way, is the negative character traits that are listed. We went to page 14 where the positive character traits were a bit earlier. And as a reminder, since we're over there, page 62, if you'll turn there. As a reminder, some of these influences that we're talking about that can come our way, that can, catch us off guard, if you will. There's so many of these things that can lead our thoughts into a certain direction. And, it has the picture right there showing the person in the middle, and it shows, food, candy, it shows some healthy food and then the candy there and everything. Of course, there's nothing wrong with sugar. But soda pop, it shows some dairy and stuff like there. You should have a great diet. You should try to eat proper. That's very important, and that can help you practice self-control. But the colors, on another page it talked about the testing your knowledge about influences, page 61. All of the things on page 61, get to know these things because all of them have an effect on your feelings and your thoughts, just like odors. Odors can have a huge impact upon where your thoughts go. Of course, any billboards or internet and so forth and so on, all these things affect you in more ways that you even know. So I highly suggest, just like it says on LP4D or E, LP4E, we're going to conclude this lesson by re-emphasizing to students that maintaining a positive moral character begins by setting your minds in advance, making up your mind, making right choices. In addition, having a plan to deal with these unexpected events and situations that can take place, those curveballs and pitfalls, and can give you the confidence to successfully maintain your positive character. Consistently, time after time, demonstrating moral character traits will in time, remember it does take time, will in time earn you the reputation of being a person of integrity. And with that, we'll conclude the lesson for tonight. Thank you all for coming. And I think our next lesson will be, let's see, on the 14th? I think on the 14th is when our next lesson will be. And so we invite everybody again to come, whether you're here in person or whether you're watching online or however you're doing this. So we look forward to seeing you again. I'll be right back.